It's time for School Days, help for moms and dads of school-age kids.
I tell parents, you're like a training wheel on a bike. Your job isn't to make the bike move. Your job is to keep the bike upright.
Those of us who are the true educators, we really want to be given the opportunity to educate the whole child.
We can get free college degrees based on all of the opportunities that are out here and available to our students.
Oftentimes, as parents, I think we want to protect our kids, but I think one of the greatest gifts we can give them is allow them to experience adversity.
Yeah.
Here are your hosts, David and Danita Bailey.
Well, welcome to School Days, help for moms and dads of school-aged kids. I'm Danita Bailey.
And I'm David Bailey.
As the saying goes, if you don't use it, you'll lose it. Summer vacation has begun, yay! And many parents of school-aged kids are trying to figure out how to balance screen time and maybe, just maybe, get their kids to read and even learn this summer. So this is kind of a hectic time for David and me, and probably a lot of you out there. We both work for ourselves, so we're at home a lot and at our office, and we're having to figure out creative ways to keep our kids occupied that don't include watching TV all day. So Dave, who's with us today?
All right. So joining us on the phone, this is our first phone guest from Baltimore, Maryland, is Aaron Phillip Dworkin, formerly of the After School National Summer Learning Association, and just came on as the new Chief Executive Officer of the National Summer Learning Association.
It's the second day.
Yes, second. Yeah, this is day 2. So welcome. We're really glad you're here. Aaron has been deeply committed to closing educational and opportunity gaps for young people through high-quality out-of-school time programs for 2 decades. Aaron joins the National Summer Learning Academy, having most recently served as president of the After School All-Stars National Network, a nonprofit organization providing free after-school and summer programs to 90,000 low-income students in over 450 Title I schools in 20 major cities across the United States. He's a frequent presenter at national education conferences, a graduate of Tufts University, a former Coro Fellow in Public Affairs, and holds a master's degree from Columbia University School of International and Public Affairs and Harvard University Graduate School of Education. He is a member of the 2019 class of leadership, Greater Washington, and serves on the National Board of Directors of the American Camp Association. So we're really glad you're here, Aaron, and looking forward to hearing your insights.
Thank you so much for having me.
And also joining us in the studio is Julie Miller. And Julie is the Executive Director of Curriculum Instruction for Irving ISD, where she has served in various positions for 22 years. Prior to this role, she served as Executive Director of PK5 schools. She was a principal at 3 schools, an assistant principal and teacher, and a dean of students. Ms. Miller earned both a bachelor's and master's degree in education from the University of North Texas, where she was a Meadows Scholar graduate, and she continued her studies at Pepperdine University in Malibu, California, and earned a master's degree in administration. So thanks for joining us in the studio, Julie.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so we want to ask you, Aaron, tell us what the National Summer Learning Association is.
Great. So thanks again for having us. And so the National Summer Learning Association is the leading national organization focused on closing achievement and opportunity gaps across the country for kids, especially during the summer. And we know that there are just so many kids who do have resources, are very fortunate in the summer to keep their learning going and experiencing wonderful opportunities, learning about STEM and literacy and health and academic support. And then there are millions of kids who do not have that same opportunity. Mm-hmm. And in the summer, they are left alone. They are not put in programs. They don't know about them. They don't have the resources, and they actually fall behind. And there's research now we've celebrated our 25th year, so there's a lot of research out there that shows something called the summer slide and summer learning loss, where kids can end up 2 to 3 months behind when they show back up in school in September, because they just haven't been able to exercise their minds the same way as their peers are. So we're focused on highlighting this issue and this problem and offering solutions and advocating and supporting folks on the ground who are trying to create new programs and create more spots for these kids and their families. And so that's a big thing. We celebrate the best programs out there that we can. We try to have them held up as a model. We advocate with policymakers at school districts and mayors and governors to make sure that they put more funding into this. And we communicate out to the field what are the best practices and the best ways to start programs and to keep elevating them and making sure that they do more for kids.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much for your work. This is an issue that we need to put more focus on, and I'm so great that you guys are doing some training and helping us have the best programs out there for our students. So, Julie, what are your responsibilities as Executive Director of Curriculum Instruction?
What do you do?
That's a really great question because I've had the job for a month, so I'm still learning myself. But, I mean, the state gives us a list of all the standards that students must master by the time they finish each course, pre-kindergarten through 12th grade. Every single class has a list of things students should learn. They just give us a long list. We have to take that list, put it in some sort of order, create a course that addresses all the learning standards in the list, align all the resources that we have available to us to those courses, and then it's curriculum. That's the curriculum side, but in my department is also and instruction. Mm-hmm. So when we also work on what are the best practices that would allow the best tools that we can give to teachers to ensure that they can teach this written curriculum in a way that is effective for students. And we keep all of that aligned and adjusted for over 180 or so courses, not including all of our band, choir, orchestra, all the fine arts.
Mm-hmm. And you're in charge of all that?
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's what I say.
Yeah.
So both of you, tell us what impact does summer learning loss have on classrooms once they resume in the fall? Either one of you.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm in Irving ISD, as you said earlier. The majority of our students are low-income students without the resources that were mentioned already previously. So our children are very capable learners, but they come to school from the outset behind. Linguistic. Their language isn't as well developed. And many of our kids, English is not their first language, and school is a very language-oriented situation. So they come without those initial resources, and they make great progress all year long, and almost catch up to their more resourced peers. And then we go home for the summer, and they fall back 2 or 3 more months. And then when they come back, they're they're further behind, and then they make really great progress, but they don't catch up quite enough. And then they go home for the next summer. And so every summer that they go home and lose a month or 2 of learning, they come back just a little bit further and further behind. And the effect can be devastating if we don't do something to support them, because again, their capacity to learn is equal to any child anywhere.
Absolutely.
And their right to learn is equal to any child anywhere. So it's just a matter of making sure that we apply our resources or help parents know where those resources are to ensure that loss doesn't occur.
Mm-hmm. Aaron, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. Well, I agree with what Julie was saying. I'd also say that not only are we seeing that there's a drop-off in the skills but in the summer months, almost, in the 3 months of reading or math skill loss, but that it's cumulative. It adds up over time.
Yeah.
So if you have this every summer, you can end up being 2 to 3 years behind your peers because they've had all this extra learning opportunity that you haven't. So it's not only what happens right now this summer as we are in the present moment, but also over time. But I will also say there's academic gaps that we're addressing, but also what we were talking about before is the opportunity gaps. So the summer is when kids get to go have these new experiences. Maybe you're hanging out at your grandmother's farm for the first time, and you're helping out and learning about animals or planting, or maybe you're taking a trip with your family, or you get these experiences that kids who have more resources are getting. And that gives them a broader view. All of a sudden, what they're learning makes sense, and they can connect it. They've learned about careers. They've met mentors. They've had camp counselors who are in college who they look up to, who are talking to them about college every day over their summer. And so, hey, now you come back in 6th grade, and boy, I can't wait to do well in school because I want to go to college with my camp counselor who tells me it's so great. So there's all these other social-emotional learning benefits, academic benefits, opportunity gaps that we're closing. And also I just want to highlight the very immediate need that a summer program addresses around meals. And there's millions of kids who go hungry in the summer, who they're on the free and reduced lunch program every day at school being fed, and then that stops. And if they're not in a program, they might not eat. And so all these summer programs that we're lobbying to make sure have funding or advocating for, whether it's at a museum or whether it's in a library or Parks and Rec, they're not only helping the kids academically, but they're helping them be fed and having their basic needs met. So there's just so much that we're addressing. But if I may, I'll just say one other quick thing where I think it matters, which is it's not only that we're trying to close gaps and have people, catch up, but we're also trying to help families and kids propel forward and improve. And when I think about this work, and David, you were talking about earlier, all the things you did over the summer that really helped you improve your skills and not just like catch up, right? So I think about I played high school basketball, and my coach always used to say, no one gets better during the season. The kids who show up next year that are stars, it's because they put in the work and the time over the summer. That's when you improve. And then you see those results during the season. I think that applies to what we're talking about with the kids we're trying to serve. That if they put in effort and join one of these amazing programs that we have all across our country and our communities, then you'll see the results during the school year.
Just as a really quick aside, my first, as many people know, my first experience teaching was in a Title I school, and I taught 8th grade math, and I'm coming in with a lot of assumptions about what students should know in 8th grade. And I'm teaching, and I remember this so clearly. I remember teaching, and it was some problem, and I said, what's 8 times 7? And mind you, this is 8th graders. It was crickets. They were looking at me like I was crazy. And I was thinking, how in the world could a student in 8th grade not know 8 times 7? And then to contrast it, I taught at another school, high-performing school, and I taught 4th graders there. And a lot of my 4th graders could have run circles around the 8th graders that I taught. These kids were just high flyers. I mean, we would do pre-assessments in August on what they were going to test for in April and May for the state exams, and they were already scored in hundreds in August before I even taught the stuff. So, and the parents, they really made an investment in their children. So, I've seen both worlds, and it really does make an impact when there's that support and when they don't have the support.
So, David, how much time? I know we've talked about this before. So, in the fall, when you start school, do you get to just start the new, 8th grade curriculum, or do you have to? Is there any reteaching that is required because of summer learning loss?
Oh yeah, I mean, in the beginning, it's just trying to kick the summer rust off because they haven't been in that thinking mode necessarily. And just a lot of review. It's at least the first month
6 weeks,
is focusing on almost exclusively review, and then there's a lot of review we have to do throughout the year because they never really mastered it from the year prior. So depending upon what class I was in and what the content was, I had to do a lot of spiraling, which means basically going back and making sure that they got the foundation that they should have had the year prior, just to be able to do the math we have to do this year. On top of learning how to do it in a word problem context. So there's a lot of factors that are going in, and I had kids who just weren't, they were struggling, so I had to pull kids aside and work with them individually because, I shouldn't hold the other kids back because they got it. So it's a very complicated dynamic in the classroom. You have kids that are soaring and kids that are kind of on level and kids that are really struggling. And we have to educate to all of them, and that's what the struggle of every, Julie, I'm sure that's what your job is. How do you help to equip these teachers to do that? So anyway.
So you don't get to hit the ground running as a teacher in the fall. You have to reteach a lot of the stuff that they learned that they lost over the summer.
Yeah, especially in math. I know, especially in math.
Yeah. So Aaron and Julie, in your opinion, since summer learning loss is such an issue, does that make a good case for year-round school?
Go ahead, Aaron.
You want I will say no. It's not that we want year-round school. We want year-round learning. And I think there's something special about summer. I mean, there's summer school programs or school-based programs, but even those programs we want to see, take on a different feel of, not just punishment and not just more of the same, but that there are these great new experiences. And again, it does fall along class lines. I mean, when you hear about people discussing year-round school, they're not talking about it for middle and upper middle class kids. They're only talking about it for low-income kids.
Interesting.
And if you were a middle or upper middle class person, you wouldn't want your child to be sitting in a hot classroom for another 3 months. Now it's okay if they're being taught in a creative way, a hands-on way, a different way where they could build more relationships and have smaller classroom sizes and more hands-on experiences, and maybe less pressure and less punitive. So I think the name of our organization is Summer Learning Association. We don't want it to just be cupcakes and hanging and playing and doing nothing and hanging out, but we want everybody to be taking their advantage of their time. And you have more time, by the way. That's also the very big power of summer. It's not just a couple hours after school or what they have to get done in the school day. There's so many requirements. Is that you have this flexibility to do to explore different areas that you might not have otherwise. So entrepreneurship, STEM, whether it's dance, art, music, all these amazing things, health, nature. So there's so many topics that you want to get to that we don't always have time during the school year, but during the summer there's some real availability around that. And I just wanted to put a plug that one of the places where you could see all this on display is July 8th through 13th. Our organization is helping coordinate something called National Summer Learning Week. There'll be almost 1,000 different events across the country where people are celebrating the importance and raising awareness of learning more over the summer and taking ownership of your own learning. And every day there'll be a different focus area, whether it's arts or STEM or college and career readiness, nutrition, wellness. And one last thing that I'll just mention to you is about workforce development and career exploration experience.
Yeah.
So many, if you think about summer internships, which everyone needs in this day and age in order to get a real job, that is a form of summer learning.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So you have an intern sitting there with you right now.
Yeah. Hey, Maya.
Shout out to Maya.
Right? She might not be able to do it during the school year. And so similarly, you look at all these kids, and that's a step. And if you look on Capitol Hill and all the people who work for their senators or congressmen, too often those internships are unpaid, and that is also very punitive and discriminatory in my opinion. But we want to make sure that people know that there's these summer learning work experiences that we need to make sure kids have the funding to do and that all kids have a chance to experience.
I'd like to, you mentioned earlier, like going down to grandma's house. I mean, there's so much that we learn outside of school. I mean, if school were the only place that we ever learned anything, then children would get to kindergarten as a completely blank canvas. Mm-hmm. But that's not what happens. But in order for kids to really excel in school, reading and speaking and listening, the language arts, it's so critical. And if you have very limited background, very limited experiences, we have students who going to the other side of the freeway in Irving has never happened to them.
Wow.
Because I mean they don't see things, they don't do things. But so when you read a book, it's a completely foreign experience. So that also compounds the learning differences that can occur. So I really like what you said, Aaron, about it's not just about math facts and science facts, and there's so much of the world to learn. It's not just school learning that we should support children in their experiences with.
And thank you. I agree with you. And also that, just to re-emphasize that point, there's also context. So if you're taking a standardized test in high school and it says, in Paris at the Louvre Museum, there's now maybe you could read it, but you don't even know what they're talking about, right? Because maybe you haven't been to a museum or you don't know about where Paris is. There's like all these other context clues that help kids, understand the world around them that, again, more experience in the summer can maybe, broaden their minds and horizons and then prepare them to connect dots.
So if I'm a mom that is of a middle class family, do I still, or a mom or a dad? I'm just a mom.
But
do I
are
need
you something
to?
else?
Right.
If you're a mom.
No, I'm saying those listening. I need to be concerned about summer learning loss? Does it just affect low income kids, or does it affect all kids is my question.
Well, if you're not careful, it can affect all kids.
Right.
It's the middle income, high income students tend to have the ready at hand resources. They have an at home library. They have parents who talk to them about their books and take them to museums and take them on vacations to trips and have been further than across the freeway to the local supermarket. So the learning happens. I grew up in a poor family, but my parents were very well educated. My parents were both educators, we had resources available to us, and they took us places and they talked to us about things. That's a great way to learn things. Your parents know all kinds of things. Just talk to your children about the experiences and what you're learning, and that makes a big difference. But those kinds of resources aren't always as readily available for lower income students, so the impact of summer learning can be more harsh.
Right.
I remember one of my students I coached, this was years ago now, lived in a very affluent area of Dallas. Just on the flip side of it is, I think no matter where you are, that if you're not actively engaging with your children, no matter what your socioeconomic status, that it can be a challenge. I mean, this kid lived in a beautiful, beautiful home, huge home, but he was by himself all the time because his parents were working all the time to accumulate the lifestyle that they were living. But he was not getting any support at all. I mean, I remember he was eating snackables for dinner. I mean,
What's snackable? A Lunchable?
Lunchable.
Oh, okay.
Well, one of those bowls. Yeah.
Something unhealthy.
Yeah, and it just broke my heart. So I've seen it on both ends where so just the importance of having that support and encouragement is critical. No matter where you are, because sometimes work can get in the way, or just busyness of life, and you look up and you're not getting the support you need. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, can I just also agree with you? I'll just say that you're totally right, and I think the concern and care and investment we put into our children is important no matter what economic class that they're born into. And just your examples are 100% right. And you could watch. There's a documentary called. There were two that came out at the same time a few years ago. One was called "Waiting for Superman," that focused on the people's efforts to Jeffrey Canada to help low-income kids. And then in the private school world, there was a documentary called "Race to Nowhere," which was all about the horrible pressures and the real deep problems that are being caused in really affluent communities when kids have maybe so many things, but all these other pressures, and they're not doing well either. So you see problems across economic class, but I think you're saying the solution again is about how many opportunities we can create for caring adults to spend time with children.
Yeah,
and to really, invest in them, know them, put them in an opportunity. You don't need a lot of money to do it. Like you were saying, if you could take the kids to your local library, that's a field trip. If you could take your kids to the public beach, the public park, or the public, hiking trails, those are all new experiences that don't cost very much. And I think that's one thing we want to make sure your listeners know, that you don't have to have $20,000 and send your kid to a camp for 10 weeks in Maine, but that there's things right there in Irving and right nearby and right in every community, great resources and opportunities to learn and expand their skills. And the other thing I'll also talk about that matters, that right now is a very hot button issue, but we know it forever, is the term SEL, social emotional learning. And that is that in today's workforce and going forward, your ability to interact with people different than you, to work in a team, to have leadership skills and management skills, all that stuff matters just as much as what you may be able to compute mathematically or how well you write an essay. If you can't work well in a team, you're not going to do well necessarily in a lot of jobs. And so a lot of those skills can be built through our summer learning programs that kids are entering, and whether it's sports or these team or theater or arts and other things. So there's just so much to be able to learn and practice over the summer.
So let's talk about some more practical things that we can do with our kids. One of the things we've talked about in the past is, we go on vacations, and sometimes just going to places that have historical significance. So you go to some historical landmarks and, see the battle of such and such happened here, and, just being very practical and engaging our kids. So are there some other things that we can do that maybe we do weekly or daily that would help in reducing summer learning loss?
So because of where I am, I tend to focus on the things that are absolutely and completely free.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
So the cost associated is your time and your willingness to do so.
Yes.
So you mentioned earlier, Aaron mentioned the libraries. The public library is a fantastic resource.
Yeah.
They have and I'm a book person. I'm a book fan. Like read is a big thing for me. Read and talk about what you've read. Reading is free. You can have online. You can read an online book. You can read a cereal box. I don't go to the museum. It's free, and there's reading all over the place. And the opportunity to talk about and model for your children that you are interested in the world around you. It's absolutely free to take them to the Dallas Museum of Art and just, I wouldn't go through the whole thing with very young children, but just go through and talk about what you see, what you think, how you feel about it, and let them see that you're reading the little cards on the side to learn more about what you're seeing. These are free things. Take them with you to the grocery store.
Absolutely.
Cook a meal with them. Ask them, the recipe calls for 2/3 of a cup of flour, but I'm only making half of the recipe. I wonder how much flour I should use.
Yes.
These are free things. It's really, at the stoplight, how many green cars do you see? It's helping kids understand that learning is all around them, and the experiences to broaden your horizons they're everywhere, and we just have to open up their minds to that possibility as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the free stuff.
Yeah, the free, well, and that's what I want to focus on is, things that we can do to just be intentional with our children. Just even, you talked about having a paper route.
Yeah.
So, entrepreneurialism, and, you say you want to get that Xbox. And so how many hours are you going to have to work? What are you going to have to charge for your lawn mowing service in order to get whatever it is that you're wanting to get? Help them with their math skills in that way.
And then teach them also to persist when things are hard. We are in an era where we have to save our children from the pain of failure, but failure is an opportunity to learn.
Yep.
So I'm sorry that you didn't earn enough for your Xbox. We'll put your money you earned this summer in the bank, and next summer you can work some more, and then you can have it.
Yep.
Deferred gratification. There's nothing wrong with it for learning.
That's absolutely right. We did a show last week on teaching your child to fail well, so we talked about that quite a bit.
If I may also just add, I think one thing that we're touching on here is there's not only the importance and the onus on young people learning, but that we want our adults that are in their lives modeling that they could still be learning themselves.
Yes.
So we want to dispel this idea that you learn everything you can when you're in formal school and then it stops. And I think if they see adults, and so when we talk about summer learning, I like to think about it not only summer learning the importance for young people, but also for the adults too. And that's what you see, right? You see teachers taking time in their summers and going to conferences because that is when they're going to learn and they're going to improve. And so that we want our parents and our adults and the adult role models to just be modeling that. If they're reading, young people will say, okay, I should be reading too. If they're going out to museums and trips and stuff, and even bring people in their lives to come and talk to young people about what the different jobs that they have. Why do we go visit, take your kid to work day one day a year,
Right.
There are other days in the calendar and over the summer where it would be nice to job shadow and show people what people are doing and have kids understand. So I just brought in this idea of summer learning is only for kids. Summer learning is also for adults too, and when they do it together, it's even more powerful.